What initially piqued my interest in Islam, funny enough, was hijab videos on YouTube. Um, this was way back in 2009, 2010 when I was a teenager, and I came across a couple hijab videos with some well-known YouTubers. And it made me really want to look into what exactly hijab was, which then brought me to Islam and what Islam actually was. I didn't have a whole lot of like prejudice about Islam beforehand, but I really didn't know anything. Um, and after that, I started really researching Islam to the point where for Christmas one year, my sister gave me a book on Taoism to try to broaden my horizons on other religions because some family, I guess, was nervous about my interests. Shortly thereafter, when I went to college, when I was 18, I started trying on the hijab. I became friends with a Muslim girl that I worked with at an Old Navy, and she was the one that kind of answered my questions. She brought me to her family. Her mom was also a revert, and they really formed a bond with me and really helped me get comfortable with the religion. I learned a lot. We're talking, I didn't even know that other women can see my hair. As I stated before, when I started going to college and trying the hijab on, and I shortly thereafter stopped looking into Islam, I left Islam behind for a couple years. I ended up having a child, being a single mother, and every time I would think about Islam, it felt like home. Even though I didn't really, know too much about it still. It was still very much in my heart, and it felt like who was I. It felt like that was who I was. And so I had a Muslim friend that I knew who became very practicing in the times that I knew this person. And, he actually introduced me to some sisters who could help me out learning more about Islam and hijab and, everything about Islam really that I needed to know. Said friend, and the sweet sisters that he introduced me to had invited me to Masjid Al Wali in Edison and to an Omar Suleiman conference lecture. So, fortunate enough for me, I didn't have to pay any tickets, and I really did understand the gravity of what I was where I was going. Um, and so I went, and this was the first time that I was introduced to the separation of the genders. It did scare me a little at first, and I'm like, I don't really know anybody here. Um, and so again, I got introduced to more sisters who kind of took me to I think it was like the second or third row. And that day, Omar Suleiman was lecturing about Salman the Persian. And I remember, looking back when I was looking for religion in Christianity, and I would go to youth groups and I would see all these, people my age getting emotional during their prayers and their prostration to the person that they believe is God, Prophet Isa, peace be upon him. And there I was in a similar situation where I was listening to this lecture, and we got to the moment where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, and Omar Suleiman was talking about how Salman, he got so upset and just cried and cried. And I just couldn't help myself and I just started crying. And I didn't understand why I was crying. Later that night, when I got home, I kind of made the decision that this was the sign that I was looking for, that I needed to become Muslim to take my Shahada. And maybe 2 weeks later, I did take my Shahada.